All right, here we go. Let's talk about it. So, after months and months of covering the upcoming release for the 2025 James Gunn Superman, starring David Corenswet as Clark Kent and Superman, Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, and so many other actors that are absolutely fantastic in this movie, it is time to actually talk about the film itself. And I do agree, I think, with a lot of the critics of this movie, or at least the ones who are looking to share with you their thoughts on it, that this is going to be a polarizing movie. I've seen a lot of people on both sides of the issue that I have had plenty of movies, each of which that I've agreed with on, some of which who liked this movie a lot, and some of which who didn't care for this movie in any way, shape, or form. And I think that is going to be the case du jour for a lot of people. I think that your own personal taste is going to inform how you feel about this movie, and I'll try my best to explain as we go through it here, but I absolutely loved this film. I loved this film. When we got out of the theater last night, I actually, I deleted X off my phone like 2 weeks ago just because, it's better for you. You're not on it all the time. You're not getting flooded with bad news. But I actually put it back on my phone so that I could, tweet out, post out how much I love this film. But I freely admit that the reasons I love this film are probably more inclined to do with my unique, my personality than anything else. And let's go through a little bit of the plot here first. And again, the plot and the story seems to be where a lot of the critique for this film is coming from. And the thing is it's perfectly valid. The criticisms people have pointed out seem to make perfect sense to me. So in the movie, Clark has been Superman for 3 years now, and Lex Luthor has an overly complicated plan to start a war between two rival countries that are totally not in any way, shape, or form representative of real countries in the real world. That's actually not true. Like, if you actually, my fiance was watching this, and she said it was more like Russia and Ukraine. Some people are saying it's kind of like Israel, Palestine. She said it's a little bit India and Pakistan. The point is they don't use real countries, and it's a convoluted plot anyways, and it has to do with getting the government to disavow Superman, who gets involved with this conflict because he can't bring himself to just let something like this happen. He can't let people lose their lives if he has the ability to prevent that from happening. Kind of a la, the discussion that was going on around Captain America and Iron Man in Captain America Civil War with the Sokovia Accords and everything to do with that. It's an underbaked version of that in this movie. And Lex gets into the Fortress of Solitude and gets out a message from Clark's family, which he has only heard part of, and then they have the rest of it translated, and it turns the public against Clark. So I am going to get into spoilers in this. I don't think I've given you guys any spoilers. I've just kind of giving you plot synopsis so far, but it's going to be hard for me to talk about this. Let's be fair. It's hard for me to talk about any movie unless I talk about spoilers a bit, because it's the way I do things, but we will get into it a little bit. First things first, I'll get into the positives and a couple of negatives. David Corenswet is absolutely fantastic. I cannot stress enough how good David Corenswet is as Superman. He embodies a sense of hope, optimism and empathy that shines through in this film. And the thing about it is that the hope, the optimism, and the empathy are the through line that, for someone like me, allows them to be more forgiving of an overcrowded cast, of a somewhat derivative and repetitive plot. Look, I think your love or hatred for this film is really going to come down in a lot of ways to you as the viewer, to your temperament. Are you a more sentimental person? Is the image of Clark Kent saving human, pet, robot, alien alike, is Clark's empathy, Clark's desire to help and save others, is that enough to carry you through a movie like this and leave you with a good feeling when you leave the theater? And for me, it absolutely was. Perhaps it's because we live in this day and age now where when it comes to Hollywood, the only thing that they seem to like to do with these types of movies is tell you about the shades of gray. They want to, if not bring the hero down to the level of the villain, what they want to do is give the villain some overly complicated backstory that in a lot of ways justifies their choice to make horrible choices and do awful things to people. It's like when you hear the cliche of like, we're not so different, you and I. Like, I don't want to hear about how, it's long past time that I want to hear the stories about, we're not so different, you and I. In this, Lex, which Nicholas Hoult does a fantastic job of portraying the kind of blind rage that Lex Luthor feels for Clark. And I will want to point out also, just as an aside, that I am no Superman lore historian. I love Smallville, if I'm being completely honest, and I've seen all of the movies except for maybe, I don't know if I ever actually finished the 2006 Brandon Routh Superman movie, but I've seen them. I can't say that Superman has ever always been my favorite superhero. It could just be that at this time when I saw this movie, where I am in my life, that this was the movie for me at this time in my life. And seeing the unbelievable way in which David Corenswet portrays this character, his humanity, that could just mean that it resonates with me at this time, and for others it won't. This movie doesn't have any of the BS that they talk about, the stuff that has been clouding the narrative around the film, which we have reported on and talked about, the stuff around immigration and all of this stuff. That's not what this movie is. This is not what the general public who likes to talk about the idea of what wokeness is. It's not what I would consider a woke movie, though I'm sure there will be people who disagree with me on that. I did see some arguments to the contrary. But again, the reason I don't use that word as a qualifier for anything is that depending on who you're asking, you could ask 10,000 people what that word means and get 10,000 different definitions, and each of them will swear by it that what they're saying is the correct definition of that of that word. So look, he saves humans, he saves aliens, he saves babies. He even tries to take down the kaiju in the most human way possible. And the more effort that he put into this, the more humanity he showed, the more empathy he showed for everyone around him, the more my positive feelings for this film solidified. There was a moment when after he makes up with Lois after their blowout earlier in the film, where he says he's going to turn himself in and he wants to save Crypto, and he says he's probably alone and scared. And like, that was the moment for me. I was like, look, how can you dislike this portrayal of the character? And again, I'm letting you know that is probably a lot to do with my own personal inclination towards storytelling, and that I am very forgiving of the plot. I am very forgiving of the overblown cast if it means that I get to, get the feels in the way that this did. And it's not going to be that way for everybody. I 100% agree with that. Look, in a society today, in today's day and age, with a society that talks as much about empathy and care for your fellow human, the idea that this movie wouldn't resonate with people would be more an indictment on a population that now claims to care about other people more than they ever have before in society, despite the fact that we feel more disconnected from society than ever before. Despite the internet and how closely connected we are with everything around us, it does feel in a lot of ways like we've lost a general sense of human decency towards one another. So, that would be, I think that if this movie doesn't necessarily do well, it could be an indictment of two things. One, it could be what I just said before earlier, and that some people, they just, the story shortcomings were something that they couldn't overcome, or the overblown cast was something they couldn't overcome. Or it means that a lot of people aren't really as into the idea of care for your fellow man as they claim to be. And I would believe that answer 100% as well. And I guess, it's not a negative, but they give Lois a lot to overcome early on in this movie, and freely admitting that when I go see movies, a lot of the times, you can have your objective take on how you think a movie is, but a lot of times, depending on who you are, your vibe going into it, if you're in a bad movie when you go, if you're in a bad mood when you go to a movie, sometimes that can rub off on the film. And I freely admit that on a different day, it is possible that Lois's character in those opening scenes would have really, really annoyed me. There's just a grating nature to her in just the very beginning that she, to Rachel Brosnahan's credit, overcomes beautifully. And in a lot of ways, it's for a couple of reasons. They do very well to make sure that her and Clark get past these things early on, and that she acknowledges the difference in their personalities. It's kind of the whole purpose of this scene early on where Lois interviews Superman. They've been dating for a couple of months now. It's there to show a vast difference in their personality types, with Lois being this suspicious, yet, this pragmatic yet suspicious reporter with a lot of integrity. She doesn't believe anything at face value. And look, that's something good in a journalist. Whereas Clark is kind of shown to you as the polar opposite. He believes that everyone has a good heart, and he wants to believe in the humanity of everyone around him. And that optimism is shone off Lois. And what it does is it ends up elevating Lois later, because the two actors do have fantastic chemistry, both on screen in a performance way and in this way that, when Lois is on her own, she's gruff, she's hard-nosed, and she's kind of standoffish. But when her and Clark are close, and when they have those moments together, she seems to kind of melt in front of him, which, speaks to their ability to kind of go from one environment to the other and really embody whatever the director, James Gunn, was looking for them to do so in that moment. But that abrasive personality may rub some people the wrong way, depending on how they feel going into it, but their chemistry does shine through. The Justice Gang is one that... the Justice Gang. Olivia, my fiance, asks me, she's like, the Justice Gang? I'm like, well, there's the Justice Society of America and there's the Justice League. You have Guy Gardner, you have Mr. Terrific, and you have Hawkgirl. I will say off the bat, look, it was kind of something, this is kind of similar to how I felt in Black Adam, which is that they cast actors for these roles that I really, really, really like. So I freely admit that, look, in Black Adam, Sarah Shahi got time to shine. I've always loved her as an actress, with whether it was Person of Interest, Fairly Legal, all of these other series that she did. I think she was also in the early seasons of, or the early episodes of Alias, which I really, really enjoyed. So Sarah Shahi and Aldous Hodge really got a chance to shine in Black Adam. And kind of comparatively in this film, Nathan Fillion and Eddie Gathegi are both actors that are television actors, despite the fact that I think Nathan Fillion is a very, very, well-known actor. People are going to think of him in the case of like, The Rookie or Castle, but really it's Firefly for them. So you think of him as a TV actor. Seeing Eddie Gathegi, who goes, for me, goes all the way back to early seasons, like season 4 of House, where he plays the Mormon the Mormon character that House always dunks on. He goes on, does the Blacklist. He does all of these other things. I think a lot of people know him from X-Men too. Like, they cast these actors that I really, really like. And Mr. Terrific especially gets some of the best lines and the best scenes in the movie. He gets to be the cool one-liner deliverer in this movie, and I think he rises to the occasion beautifully. But if you don't feel that connection to those actors, it's possible that they are going to be one of the elements that's weighing this film down, because it takes away from Clark, because we spend quite a bit of time with Mr. Terrific and with Lois Lane going to track Clark down, and it gets you away from the screen. So depending on who you are, if you would like this movie to have focused like entirely on Superman and you don't have that connection with those actors, it's possible that this won't work for you the way it worked for me. But look, for all of the very justifiable complaints about story and overcrowding, I think that the optimism that Superman embodies in this film is the perfect through line. and it hides the faults, and I love that about it. It did have some things that I would consider negatives. So the storyline, which once again revolves around the concept of like superhero morality, as I said before, Clark's inability to let evil happen without acting on it. It is repetitive of the concept of like a civil war if you're a movie guy, not a comic guy, and Captain America's ideal that he can't just sit down and let conflict happen if he has the ability to stop it. It's not in his DNA. And the public turning on him, that felt a bit repetitive. I still think back to when the very first teaser trailer for Batman vs. Superman came out. It was the shot of it was all of the audio clips of reporters talking about the ethics of an alien on Earth, and the camera slowly pans up to the Superman statue, and then it's been spray painted and it says "False God." And I think at that time, 2014, probably 2014 or it would have been like 2015 when the trailer came out, because the movie came out in 2016. Like, it would have felt fresh and new, perhaps, to an audience, as superhero movies were really ramping up, as Marvel was succeeding and DC was trying to throw their hat in the ring. It doesn't feel new now, so that plot felt very repetitive and much ado about nothing. The one thing that I think a lot of people didn't think was going to be real in this movie was the media manipulation and the monkey bot farms that Lex has. That absolutely is in there and made me roll my eyes just a little bit. I will say one thing that was funny about it was, I don't think this was on purpose. When the news interview goes out and the translation of what Clark's family, his the Kryptonian family, which Jor-El says about his home, about what Clark's mission on Earth should be, which the first half that Clark always heard was a message of love and connection to his family, and the second half was kind of horrible. And it's posted with the translation. I did love the fact that the guy who shows it to Superman in the street and is like, yeah, this seems like BS. He was like a blue collar looking dude. He looked like he worked construction. He looked to me in a way like the type of guy that James Gunn imagines doesn't trust the media. And in a lot of ways, he's probably right. And that person would have every right not to trust the media, because the media in this country is awful. I don't think that was on purpose. And consequently, some of the other best scenes in this movie were with Ma and Pa Kent, who are Clark's anchor to the world, because at this point in the movie, he hasn't been with Lois all that long. But it felt, as syrupy and good as it was, and I liked it, it felt like a very kind of over-the-top, ham-fisted way to portray people with Midwestern sensibilities and love of family. It's the way the accents are done and everything. This wasn't, Jonathan Kent and Ma Kent in Smallville, which I think was a much more nuanced and well done approach to these characters. But again, it wouldn't make sense in a James Gunn movie to do that, given the way that his characters are always portrayed. Just look at Lex's girlfriend in this movie, who a lot of people will probably love, along with Jimmy Olsen, who is a ladies' man. People are going to argue about which real-world conflict this is mirroring. The point of the matter is if they're arguing about it, if they're like, is it about India and Pakistan? Is Boravia Israel? Is Boravia Russia? If they're arguing about these things, if they're asking, is it Russia, Ukraine? Is it India, Pakistan? Is it Israel, Palestine? That means that it's vague enough that it doesn't have to be any of them. Sometimes a movie isn't political. Sometimes a movie is just a movie, and I think in a lot of ways that's what this is. They even bring in Maxwell Lord at the end. Was it Maxwell Lord or was it Ted Cord? To say, I think the one thing that liberals and conservatives can finally agree on is that Lex Luthor sucks. So look, this movie left me with good feelings. I think James Gunn continues his ability to really capture emotion, despite the fact that you're not always dealing with human characters. He captures a more emotion through Metamorpho. He captures emotion through Superman's respect, love, and care for number 4, who repeatedly talks about how he's not able to have human emotions because he is a robot. That is a delicate balance to strike, and I think he does it beautifully. If I had one more nitpick, it's that I think that Crypto is going to be an absolute favorite in this movie for a lot of characters. Certainly was for my fiance. But there are so many pets in this movies. There's a scene at the end where everybody's leaving town with pets when this story, it's a pocket dimension, but it's basically it's this movie's version of a Skybeam, right? It's not a Skybeam, but it's a Skybeam. It's a world-ending event that's happening in town, and everybody's leaving town with their various pets. It works so well that if you're looking at it constructively, it can border on the knowledge that it's clearly emotional manipulation, but it works very, very well. So, guys, let me know down below, did you go see Superman? Were all of the discussions that people had about immigration and forcing this, both liberals and conservatives, whether it's the journalist over at Variety or the Fox News people talking about super woke, did those conversations kind of scare you off going to see this movie and you just decided to watch reviews like this instead? I want to know what you think about it. I want to know if you are like me and Superman's beacon of hope is enough to kind of push you through this movie and make you love it like I did. If you didn't, also let me know down below what it was that you didn't like about this film and tell me what your favorite Superman movie is. Obviously, a lot of fans of previous iterations are going to be out in force comparing it to the versions they love over the weekend, but I'd love to hear all your thoughts down below in the comments. If you don't know what our podcast is, guys, it's Pop Culture Crisis. We are live Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is, of course, noon Pacific on YouTube and on Rumble. We have an audio version that goes up 5 days a week on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, all of these places. We would love for you to join us. It's a whole lot of fun. Let me know what you thought about Superman down below. Talk to you soon, guys. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.